What happens when political muscle meets economic backlash? That's exactly what we're seeing play out between Donald Trump, former US President, and Mark Carney, one of Canada's most respected financial minds. Trump's bold move to reintroduce aggressive tariffs in a bid to intimidate and dominate international trade has started to unravel, and the blowback is hitting right at home, the American auto industry. Let's break this down. Trump has long criticized what he calls unfair trade practices, often targeting countries like China and Canada. His idea is simple: impose heavy tariffs on foreign imports, including auto parts and vehicles, to pressure these nations into more favorable trade deals for the United States. In theory, it's a power move. In practice, it's starting to hurt US businesses more than foreign ones. Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of Canada and later the Bank of England, is no stranger to economic warfare. Under his influence, Canada responded swiftly, by tightening trade partnerships with the EU and Asia, while reducing dependence on US suppliers. Canada has also threatened reciprocal tariffs on key US industries, starting with auto and steel. This is where the blowback begins. American car manufacturers, Ford, GM, Tesla, all rely heavily on Canadian aluminum, lithium, and parts. In fact, the average US-made car contains over $5,000 worth of Canadian materials. When Trump's new tariffs went live, supply costs immediately jumped. The Canadian dollar, strengthened by trade realignment, added further inflation. Instead of hurting Canadian producers, the tariffs made it harder and more expensive for American automakers to compete. Especially in international markets, where costs and margins are tight. Meanwhile, Mark Carney publicly criticized the US administration's decision as economically self-destructive and warned that this strategy would undermine North American manufacturing unity, which had been a pillar of economic growth under the USMCA agreement. Now, smaller American auto parts suppliers are reporting reduced contracts. Layoffs have begun in Ohio and Michigan. Dealerships are warning of higher car prices by Q4. Trump, known for doubling down rather than retreating, accused Canada of economic manipulation. But behind closed doors, analysts say the US Trade Representative's office is considering quiet revisions to avoid an all-out economic fracture. This isn't just about cars. It's about economic pride versus economic survival. And for now, the numbers aren't favoring Trump. Let's look deeper into how the tariff war is playing out on both sides of the border, and what it could mean for consumers, workers, and geopolitics. Canada, under Carney's ideological influence, is not only weathering the storm, it's redirecting it. Instead of retaliating with blunt force, Canada has begun surgically targeting American companies that are politically sensitive, many of which are based in swing states. This includes farm machinery, beer exports, and now electric vehicles. One shocking development? Canada is now in advanced talks with European and South Korean firms to jointly develop battery supply chains, bypassing US companies entirely. At the same time, the Canadian government has launched a $2.5 billion support program for their own auto sector to ease any short-term impact and further decouple from American reliance. This move was praised as strategically brilliant by international economists. In contrast, the US appears disorganized. The White House has issued contradictory statements, one moment claiming the tariffs are temporary pressure tools, the next implying they may be permanent. This has sent mixed signals to Wall Street. Auto stock prices have seen turbulence. Ford is down 7%, GM 5%, while Tesla, which also imports materials from Canadian suppliers, saw a 3% dip despite EV demand. The bigger concern? Consumer prices. A mid-range SUV that cost $36,000 last year may reach $39,000 by early next year. Families are already tightening their budgets, and auto loan delinquencies are rising. This tariff policy, aimed at protecting American strength, could instead weaken household buying power. Carney's long-term vision appears to be working: create resilience through diversification, maintain diplomatic composure, and outmaneuver US aggression with strategy, not ego. In a recent televised interview, Carney said, "Tariffs are blunt instruments. The modern economy requires precision." That one sentence sums up the entire dilemma. Meanwhile, union leaders in the US are now in conflict. Some backed Trump in the past, believing in his pro-American rhetoric. Now, facing job cuts and factory shutdowns, they're reconsidering their alliances. The Midwest, once a stronghold of support, is turning skeptical. If current trends continue, the real loser of this economic standoff may not be Canada, but the very US workers Trump vowed to protect. Conclusion? Tariffs are tools, but tools can break if misused. And when politics overrides economic logic, it's not just numbers that suffer, it's people, jobs, and futures. If you found this breakdown helpful, like the video and subscribe. We cover deep dive geopolitical and economic shifts weekly, without the noise. So what now? Where does this leave the US-Canada trade relationship, and how should American industry respond? What we're witnessing isn't just a tariff dispute, it's a structural shift in North American trade. Canada, once reliant on the US as its dominant partner, is proving that alliances can evolve. And with every new battery plant, trade agreement, or diversified supplier network, the leverage balance shifts. For American manufacturers, especially in the auto sector, this means one thing: adapt or fall behind. Companies now have to face a stark reality. If they want to remain competitive, they must diversify their own supply chains, reduce exposure to volatile political decisions, and invest in long-term stability. That may mean shifting sourcing away from countries at risk of sanctions. It may also require lobbying for more consistent and rational trade policies. Interestingly, some US auto firms have already begun to quietly open new sourcing agreements with Mexico and Southeast Asia. Others are lobbying the government to create new incentives for domestic production of aluminum and EV batteries. Whether these moves come in time to counteract the damage already done remains to be seen. Meanwhile, public opinion is changing. Americans are beginning to understand that tariffs don't exist in a vacuum, they hit wallets, jobs, and growth. And while strong rhetoric plays well on cable news, families care more about the cost of their next vehicle than political theater. This entire situation is also a lesson in leadership. Mark Carney didn't issue threats. He didn't tweet ultimatums. Instead, he quietly maneuvered, strengthened Canada's position, and gained leverage, not by noise, but by structure. That's how modern economic strategy works. Donald Trump, by contrast, followed a more combative path, hoping pressure would bring compliance. It hasn't. If anything, this episode has strengthened the case for diplomacy over dominance. But let's be clear, this story isn't over. The US still holds immense industrial power. It still has the potential to lead globally in EVs, semiconductors, and clean energy. But only if it chooses strategy over ego. In the months ahead, keep an eye on 3 indicators: whether Canada finalizes battery deals with Asia or the EU, how US automakers restructure their supply contracts, what policy adjustments the White House makes, if any, to salvage the situation. These signals will tell us whether we are headed for resolution or escalation. If you've stayed with us this far, thank you. Our goal is to provide clarity, not noise, and help you make sense of global events that affect your life. If this video gave you a clearer picture of what's happening behind the headlines, please hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to know, and subscribe to the channel. We post weekly breakdowns of global economics, tech, and power shifts, explained simply, factually, and without hype. Stay sharp. Stay informed. We'll see you in the next one.